have that square root. Okay, so when you are writing out the zeros for part B, there are going to be more than are listed here, okay? So for step 1, where you're identifying the zeros, I always just start in order. So I say, okay, it's 2 plus I. Does 2 plus I have a buddy, have a conjugate? Yes, so it's 2 minus I. Okay, and then I have root 3. Does root 3 have a conjugate? Yes, negative root 3. Okay, so this is the complex root theorem here, and this is the irrational root theorem. The last one is 1. Okay, does 1 have a buddy? No, but sometimes people get so used to writing the buddies, if they see 1, they'll write negative 1. Okay, it doesn't happen. It only happens if it's complex and irrational. Okay? Alright, so now for step 2, this is where you write out the factors. But there is something different about these factors than what we've seen in the past. So we know that the factor form is going to be x minus c, but this factor, this 2 plus I, how would we classify that if it were a polynomial? It'd be a binomial, yes. Okay, so it's a binomial, so what we're going to have to do, anytime there's a binomial, we are going to use brackets. So binomials get brackets. Okay, so I'm going to set this up with you, okay? And just bear with me for a little bit. Alright, so we have x minus, so it's always of the form x minus c. So this is x minus 2 plus I. Okay, and like I said, just walk through this with me. Don't try to go ahead yet. And then the next one is going to be x minus 2 minus I. We are going to distribute and simplify. We're just not ready for that yet. Okay, with this one, again, it's x minus root 3. The next one is x minus negative root 3. So if it's minus a negative, it's going to turn into what? The plus. And we can do that. We don't have to write it out as minus the negative. I just am very explicit about telling you that so that you know all of these are coming from an x minus. Okay, your constant. And then x minus 1. Okay, once you have it here, we are going to be doing a series of multiplication. But before we do that, if you have anything in brackets here with the binomial, what you have to do is distribute the negative. And we are going to regroup them. Okay, we're going to distribute the negative and regroup. Okay, so I want you to do that part with me. So again, I have my brackets. When I distribute the negative, I have x minus 2, and then a negative times a positive is going to be negative I. And we're going to do the same thing in this one, distribute the negative. So it becomes x minus 2, and then minus a negative is going to be plus I. Okay, so we just distributed the negative. Now we're going to regroup. When you regroup, you're going to group the first 2 terms together. What do you notice about the first 2 terms in both of these? They're the same. Okay, they should be. So if you did this correctly, these should be the same. Okay, x minus 2 minus I, x minus 2 plus I. Okay, and before we start to simplify those, we're just going to continue with this process, which is going to be, now that we've regrouped them, we have 2 binomials, so we are going to do a FOIL method here. But it is a little bit different because when you FOIL, you multiply the first term by the first term. Okay, remember I said if you did this right, they're going to be the same. So when you multiply x minus 2 times x minus 2, I want you to write it as x minus 2 squared. X minus 2 times x minus 2 is x minus 2 squared. And then because you are multiplying by the conjugates, if you remember back in chapter 2, the reason why we multiply the conjugates is because these middle terms are going to cancel out. So we're not even going to write them down. Okay, this is negative I times x minus 2. This is positive I, x minus 2. So that's going to cancel to make 0. We're not even going to write it down. We are writing enough down today. But we do have to write down the negative I times positive I, which is negative I squared. Okay, when we go to the next step, we're going to simplify what is inside the bracket. We need to remember that x minus 2 squared is not a distributive process. It is FOIL. You are going to multiply x minus 2 times x minus 2. Okay, and then this minus I squared, we know that we're going to plug in negative 1 for I squared, so we are going to simplify that. Okay, so x minus 2 times x minus 2 is x squared minus 4x plus 4. And then minus a negative is plus 1. So then this is going to simplify to x squared minus 4x plus 5. Okay, so what we've just done is we've created a quadratic trinomial that would produce 2 plus I and 2 minus I as the solutions. Okay, now we know that we have to keep going because how many zeros do we have here? How many though? 5 zeros. I believe 5 zeros is the most you will have, which is why we're going to do it together. We're doing a hard one together to make sure you know how to do that. Okay, so now we are going to FOIL these two together. If it has a conjugate, you always want to FOIL those two together, okay? Because nice things happen. For example, x times x is going to be x squared, and then what's going to happen with your middle values? They cancel out. So again, you don't have to write that down. This is negative x root 3 plus x root 3. What is root 3 times root 3? 3. So this is x squared minus 3. Okay, now this is a binomial here, and you still have this x minus 1. So let's multiply these two together. Eventually we are going to multiply all three of these. Okay, but this is going to be another FOIL. So basically you just FOIL 100 times and you will get to where you're going. Okay, so here is our FOIL. X squared times x is going to be x cubed. I'm going to do the outside because negative 1 times x squared is negative x squared. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. And then I do have that simplified, so I'm going to bring it down to its pal over here. So that's just going to make it a little easier for me to multiply. Okay, now I have a trinomial and a polynomial with 4 terms. So I do have to use the distributive process here. Okay, and you can decide how you want to do that. I know in the past, like I've written this out next to this and then distributed. I know this is already a lot of writing, so if you're like, no, I'm just going to multiply everything by x squared, it's perfectly fine. When I do that, though, I do tend to like use my finger as my placeholder. The first one, if it's x squared, all of these are just going up by what? Yeah, by 2, right, at the x squared. So this is going to be x to the 5th, negative x to the 4th, negative 3x to the 3rd, and then plus 3x squared. The next one, it's a little trickier because you do have to keep track of the number and the variable. So negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. X times x cubed is x to the 4th. So I have negative x to the 4th. Negative times a negative is a positive, so this is plus 4. X times x squared is x cubed. And then again, I'm using my finger as my placeholder. I'm doing a negative 4 times a negative 3 to get 12. I'm doing x times x to get x squared. I have my like terms lined up. And then negative 4x by 3 is negative 12x. Alright, now the last one, again, that one's a little bit easier because it's only the numbers, so I'm going to multiply by 5. So I have 5x cubed. You can see these start to line up pretty nicely. And then 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. And then 5 times positive 3 is positive 15. Then I'm going to add them all together straight down. And this is going to be p of x equals, so x to the 5th, yay, it's degree 5. Negative 1 minus 4 is negative 5. 4 and 5 is 9. 9 minus 3 is 6. 3 and 12 is 15. 15 minus 5 is 10. This would be negative 27 plus 15. We did it. We did it. Okay, after you've taken a big deep breath,